Hello.
Hello, Rabia.
How are you?
I'm filled with so much gratitude right now and so much joy. Ah, thank you so much. I'm actually really emotional here. And I want to preface this with so much gratitude and so much love for the encounter in the ethers of you, like on my path of like finding people. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you before we even begin.
What a beautiful way to start. And I thank you. We were meant to meet.
I think so. I truly think so. Um, this is meant to be like a conversation between two souls that are evolving in love with a big L in this grand life that this is such a beautiful human journey. And yeah, so welcome to Revision, the podcast. Today I have Dr. Rabia Subhani with me. And she doesn't know, she's actually the first guest on my podcast, which I didn't work with in the past. So everybody, it's a fairly new podcast. And all the people that I've had on the podcast that were guests were people that I've worked with in the past, were people that I had, I know their story like pretty deeply. And I kind of wanted to bring light to certain aspects of it in the context of re-envision, which is, there's so many things in life that we envision and then things happen and then we have to re-envision. And it's kind of like a play on, it's a constant re-envisioning. We're always like being knocked out of the park, and there's so many things that we think that, why is this happening to me? And why is this? And when we figure out that these knocking us off our feet and on our butt is meant to lead us back to where we belong, then we can really surrender to what we're meant to be doing here. And so you may know or you may not know. So Rabia, I actually found her through Melanie's World. You were part of the channel summit last fall, and there was a panel of amazing women on this summit that was like incredible. And your presentation or your conversation really stopped me in my tracks. There was so much of what you were saying that was in resonance of what I knew all along, all my life that was there, but I couldn't quite find I don't want to say the proof, but I could quite find why is this feeling inside of me? Am I not seeing elsewhere, right? What is this thing? And I think it's very easy to kind of say, well, I must be alone in this, and I'm just gonna hide the light, and I'm just gonna dim the light, and I'm just gonna shh. And last year, I actually, there's been a few things that has happening in my life over the past decade. And last year and this year, I decided that it was over. I was finding people.
That's awesome. And I'm so glad you found me. And we found each
So,
other.
and we found each other. So Rabia, there's two things that I would love to talk about with you. First, you're a therapist by training, right? You're a
I'm
neuro.
a psychologist. I actually don't do a lot of I don't do a lot of therapy. I do mostly assessments. So I test people to see if they meet the criteria for a neurodivergent diagnosis. So autism, ADHD are my two big ones.
Your two big ones, yes. And you kind of like right now we're discussing this on the other side of the fence, but there was a time where, like me, you were very much into science and not so much into the woo-woo thing.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So I actually started my education by going to medical school. and I didn't like medical school. And so I switched to a psychology graduate school. And that was more aligned with my love of the human mind and how we all behave and function and what drives us. And yes, I was very heavily science-based. If you couldn't show me evidence or research, I wasn't going to buy it. And when I started my own spiritual journey is when I completely kind of shifted to, and ironically, it's also around that time that people started doing a lot of research in the area of what we used to traditionally call, the woo-woo areas, like mindfulness meditation. They started showing that you can actually change your genetic makeup through meditation. And these were things that, 30, 40 years ago were unheard of. And so I feel like as more and more people get into the woo-woo, there are more scientists who are leading the way with doing scientific research to show us that what we've always felt all along was actually right.
I love this because I often talk about this. Like I was really a hardcore person, just like you. Like if you couldn't show me the proof, then it wasn't, the proof. And it was really much conflicted with what I was feeling inside as a grown up, like as a child growing up in a very anxious driven, like I didn't have anybody around me that could show me certain ways to surrender to the uncertainty, and because I didn't have the tools. And a lot of the control, right, that we kind of like go into overdrive with knowledge is really a type of control, right? For me it was anyways, but I observed this so many times in other people. And there was so much like resistance with me. Like I knew, like it's like I had two sides that I couldn't quite like merge together or like bridge together. And once we started to, have science like look up what we like study what we have been practicing for like thousands of years, it kind of opened a door to like, wait a second, there's so many things that we don't know just because we can't measure it, just because we can't pose hypotheses, just because it doesn't mean that it discredits the science, but it doesn't mean that the other things that we don't know don't exist. How does this resonate with you?
Absolutely. I think that a large part of that just depends on your level of consciousness. When you get to a certain level, I think you just have more faith in the divine, and you also then start seeing evidence of the divine through you, which is what kind of happened to me. Is I believed first, and then I started seeing the proof of that belief. So things like, like people talk about manifestation. So things like odd things started happening. I started, for lack of a better word, channeling or having spiritual epiphanies around different aspects of my personal and professional life. And as you get more and more evidence, then you have more and more belief, right? And so, but the first step is actually having really blind faith. It's being totally dedicated to whatever spiritual path you're on. And I really think that the basis for all of these, even the coaching and all that, is a spiritual development, right? I think if you don't have that spiritual growth, it's hard to um, really teach from a place of authenticity around what you're saying. And so for me, it was about um, well, starting the path of personal growth. And then as it evolved, and when I remembered I was a Sufi, things really started changing because then I became much more dedicated to the path I had chosen, the path that I was committed to. And I think once we start, people like Melanie are amazing because they help bring us to that place where we start to question things. And we always find her right when we need to when it's meant to be. And so, yeah, I really think the basis of all of the coaches who I feel are successful or are people that we really look up to as mentors all come from a place of deep spirituality. Like when they talk, they're and a lot of you'll also notice that a lot of the things they say are similar in different terminology, but a lot of it is about coming from a place of love, not fear, abundance, not scarcity. So a lot of the same themes keep getting played out. And when you start that growth of your own, when you start your personal spiritual growth, you'll start hearing the same themes over and over. And at some point, they really sink in and you start living them. And when you embody those principles is when you start to see the magic.
For sure. And like the there's only a limited themes that we actually like in this human experience explore, and it has been like for 1,000 years. So yes, we're seeing this, and it's coming up in a different way through the coaching industry. But like if you look through like all the Buddhism, Sufis, like there's a commonality that has been there like for a long, long, long time. And as coaches, I think that we, with our imprint, with our experience, with the resonance that we have with each other, with where we are in our growth, how do we resonate with those clients as we evolve? Do they evolve with us or not? Like there's so many like moving pieces that are so beautiful, because it is like beyond what we have been thought what being human is. And when you say like it's hard to coach from a place of authenticity when you don't have that piece, it's because, and that's something, my background is in biology. I did a bachelor's and a master's, and then I went into naturopathy, and I was really like helping people on their healing journey with modalities that are like very science-based. And at some point I was hitting a wall. Because you have to go into those places of spirituality beyond what we see with the human eye, what we actually have experienced so far. And yet we know all along, like when the open-mindedness is there, when the curiosity starts to kick in, then we all remember that it was there all along. And I love how you said, I remember that I was a Sufist. Can you tell us, for the listeners that don't know what Sufism is?
Yes, sure. So, it's interesting you mentioned about the different spiritual paths, but I think that the mystical spiritual paths are all very similar. The mainstream religions tend to go a little in a different way, but Sufism, Buddhism, Christian contemplative, I think are all Kabbalah, I think are all
Kabbalah.
very similar. And you're right, they have the same common themes. So Sufism is the mystical aspect of Islam, and it basically is called a radical path of love. And it is about remembering that we are all one and that we are nothing but pure love, recognizing the divinity within us and seeing everybody in the world as mirror reflections of ourselves. So we don't, in my particular order, we don't encourage seclusion. We're not meant to go live in a cave. We're meant to be out in the community, in the world, living our lives and learning from others. So, one of the things that we've learned is that anything that triggers us is a potential for growth.
Yeah.
Because if there's a trigger, we're all mirrors of each other. So if you're
Yeah.
triggered by somebody, there's something in that person that you need to see in yourself. And so our goal is to, one of a famous Sufi sayings is to die before you die, is to die to not kill the ego, but supersede the ego.
Continue, but I have something for you that is totally linked to this.
Okay. Do you want to tell me now?
Yeah, I can do that. I have the Mary Magdalene Oracle deck of cards. And
Oh,
before I record a podcast, I actually draw a card. And the resurrection card came up today.
wow. Oh my God.
Resurrect in this life, resurrection, the ego dies and the soul rises. And there's a small passage that says resurrection here is not about what comes in the next life. Resurrection is about what we can practice right now in this body, in this life. We can awaken to the potential of transformation with every tragedy or disappointment or loss in life, and see everything that happens as a chance for the soul to rise. We can see each death we go through as a chance to resurrect, more entirely present to this soul of love within us that survives every fire.
Oh my gosh. I got goosebumps when you said that.
That's why when you said that, I was like, whoa, whoa.
That's
And I put
amazing.
it aside because I thought that it was such in line with this conversation before we even had the conversation.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Wow. I'm still in awe. It's beautiful how the universe works, isn't it?
It's absolutely amazing. And you've been working a lot on mindfulness. And one of the things about mindfulness is, it's been studied and then it's been marketed, and then it's been like it's simple mindfulness. And yet it's difficult because it's so far from what we've been told to operate. But it's basically coming back to here, the moment,
Yes.
and acknowledging that all these moments are happening at the same time, but there's only this moment. And it's so weird because, like, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are going to resonate with this, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are going to say, what on earth is going on right now in this conversation? And yet when I started to, like, there's one time in my life when my mother, her cancer came back, and I was in the Maldives, and I was on the boat coming back home. I was on traveling, and I heard this voice inside of me saying, it's going to be a shitstorm, but it's going to be okay. And I knew that was me at some point down the line that was talking to me. And I did a podcast episode a few months ago at the beginning of this year about what happened last October, because in September there's a voice that says she's almost here.
Wow.
And right about when I heard you talk, I had an experience, like, during a night where I actually embodied in the real time. So all the timelines kind of like came together. And I'm pretty sure that the whole conversations and the whole work that I was doing kind of like, there's a catharsis at some point in our along our way. And I'm pretty sure that you were part of this catharsis. What you were saying about your path and this is why this was so important for me to have this conversation, because there needs to be conversation around this so people don't feel alone, and so people don't feel like they're like aliens. Or and I think that we've all experienced this when we had the resistance from our scientific mind, like, so yeah. So I that's one thing that I wanted to say. So if we go back to the Sufism, the ego.
Yes. Yes. So, one of the main goals of a Sufi is to learn how to transcend and achieve oneness with God or the divine before dying. And so even death is not considered, it's not something to mourn. Death is just a transition, and it's actually a reunion with the beloved. And so it's a beautiful path to me. It spoke on so many levels. I don't remember if I said this in the channel summit, but I remembered I was a Sufi by I was watching Super Soul Sundays with Oprah, and she
Oh
had
no,
a
you didn't.
I
Okay.
she does interviews with different spiritual teachers.
Okay.
She had a Sufi mystic on, and as he was talking, I was like, there's something about what he's saying that's really resonating. So I went back and found him on YouTube, and I listened to like an hour-long interview with him, and I just started bawling. I was crying, my whole body was shaking, I had goosebumps, and it was like, oh my God, I'm home. I was always a Sufi and I'd just forgotten. I'm getting goosebumps. Every time I say this, I get goosebumps. But it was such a beautiful remembering, and it was a whole soul yes. It was like, and I had had a mentor when I first started my mindfulness path. I had a mentor, a really lovely human being, a really good friend of mine, and she's a Buddhist nun, and she converted about 40 years ago, I think, from Judaism.
Okay.
And so I used to tell her, I used to learn with her, learn about Buddhism. And I used to tell her, I'm like, Joni, I think I'm Buddhist. I really think I'm Buddhist. And she goes, when your heart finds its home, your soul's going to know. When your soul finds its home, your heart is going to know. It's not going to be, I think I am. It's going to be, I know I am. And so she's the first person I called up. I was like, you were right. I'm a Sufi. And it was just such a huge pivotal moment in my life because when I'd been on the path for a while and everything was, I loved meditation and I loved a lot of different aspects of different sects and spiritual traditions, but nothing was really calling me like, this is definitely it, right? And that's what I was kind of looking for. And so when I realized that, it was a huge shift in my soul. It was like a coming home.
I love that you're saying coming home because it does feel like coming home. And when you're talking about going back like to home at the end of this journey, I always had like in my mind, I like when I was in biology and I learned about like the cells and the bodies and everything, like it was kind of like I had a way of like thinking about our relationship together, like how we are linked together. And you were talking about triggers earlier, and I think that, I feel this is what I feel, and I feel like we're kind of like a whole all shattered in this life. And we're kind of we're not like we're seeking validation and external like whatever because we know that there's something out there that is another piece of our puzzle, but we're losing ourselves in the search there, not seeing our worthiness of what we bring to the table and kind of like merge with other people. And when I kind of like envisioned this in my head, I was like, that's when I was like, okay, like this is we're meant like we're social beings, like we're social animals, like we're social beings. There's a reason why we're social beings. This is what we're meant to be doing. And I love how you're saying we are not meant to go, like in seclusion. We're meant to be in the community, to bring our colors, our uniqueness to the community. So I don't know if this is Sufism. Maybe I actually maybe I'm a Sufist. I don't know. But I know that Rumi is a mystic from the Sufism that I always love what he writes, and it always resonated a lot with me. And yeah, I don't know, maybe I need to explore this. Maybe that's why you were such an impact on me.
Could be. I mean, you know, there are some sects of Sufism that say that you don't have to be Muslim to be Sufi, but Sufi is I think it transcends religion. It's really it's a way of thinking and being and coming from a place of pure love. And the
Mhm.
order I'm in is actually it's called a Mevlevi order, which is from Rumi's lineage. So there are
Okay.
lots of different Sufi orders that come from different teachers, but the one that I resonate, so I explored a whole bunch of them when I first realized I was Sufi, and the one that called me was the one that was Rumi's lineage, and so that's the one that I actually initiated last year.
Oh, wow. That's because I do feel like I've been, I've been raised a Pancoast evangelist, and I've always resonated with a lot of things in Buddhism, a lot of things, but I don't think I'm a Buddhist. But like, so yeah, maybe I should dive into this.
Explore.
Explore. You preface this conversation by the fact that we're talking about bringing our uniqueness to the world, and you are a talented, multi-passionate, I'm gonna say serial entrepreneur, and you you
I'm a generator in human design, if that tells you
oh yes, well that was what are your lines? I'm just curious.
before.
2-4. Okay.
So I love to make connections, but I need my quiet time in the cave.
Time. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that.
Make
Me.
people make connections, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I have to go back now.
So you have, like, your path brought you to neurodiversity.
Oh, yes. So, no, actually, I was, this is kind of ironic, but I was always drawn to autism before graduate school, even. And so when I went to graduate school, I did, my specialty was in assessment for autism. And ADHD, but I ended up doing neuropsychology because I was, again, that science background was calling to me and I wanted to know how the brain works. And so I did, that was my specialization. And then after I graduated and got married, I had a child who was autistic. And so I always think, this was God's gift to me because I already knew what to do since I had gone through the training. And so I could give him the best of resources. And, if he had any challenges in school, I would know how to handle those. And um, so I was already in there in the neurodiversity world for a long time. Um, the path that I started on happened because I went through a divorce and I was having challenges with my child, and we were literally screaming at each other. And at some point, and I had a lot of shame and guilt around that because I'm like, I'm the professional, I'm the parent, I should, yes.
I should know better.
Right, exactly, exactly. And so I thought, you know what? It's not his job to fix this situation. It's mine. I'm the adult, I'm the parent. I need to do something because this is not helping him. And he's already in pain. He's a child. And so anyway, I started my spiritual path at that point. I started with mindfulness, secular mindfulness. And then afterwards, I had so much benefit from doing that with my parenting. It became much more compassionate and conscious parenting. And so I ended up teaching parents who had neurodivergent children how to also be more compassionate in their approach. And then I got into a couple of years, I started seeing a lot of parents who were neurodivergent because of course it's genetic. And so a lot of the children that were coming, their parents were like, I think I might be autistic. And so I started doing assessment with parents. And then around the time COVID hit, it's really hard to do assessments with children over telehealth. And
Yeah.
so I switched completely over to adults. And then I started specializing more in assessment for women, genderqueer, and trans folks because that was a population that is often slips through the cracks because there are not a lot of people who know how to identify autistic traits or ADHD traits in people who are not cisgender males. So that's how my
Yes.
path led me in a roundabout way. And over the last couple of years, I really, first I got into the neurodiversity affirming paradigm or movement, which completely changed my focus. And for those who are unaware, that movement really looks at looking at people's neurotypes as nothing that's a disorder. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a different way of human functioning. So people who are autistic don't have a disease or disorder. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing broken that needs to be fixed. It's just a different way of thinking. And when I found out about that movement a couple of years ago, it completely changed my approach, my focus. It made so much sense to me because I'm like, yeah, there's nothing wrong.
With
It's
the,
just a different way,
I
right?
love this, and I'm gonna have to backtrack a little bit. So just for the listeners, if so, neurodiversity is what?
Neurodiversity is the varying neurotypes among humans. So neurodiversity includes neurotypical, which is
Mm.
the mainstream way of functioning, and it includes neurodivergent, which is any kind of neurotype that differs from the typical. So this can look like acquired neurodivergence, which you may get after birth. And so that would be like depression, anxiety, anything, personality disorders that don't manifest until you're an adult, like schizophrenia. And it also includes innate neurodivergence, and those would be like autism, things that you're born with. Autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, anything that you're born with. And so some places will make a distinction between the two. I personally think if you're neurodivergent, you're neurodivergent. I don't think it really matters what flavor. So I don't know that I don't think it serves anybody to make that distinction. But Neurodiversity includes everybody's neurotype.
Well,
Neurodi
in the neuro affirming paradigm, it doesn't matter.
Nope, it doesn't matter.
It matters if you're not in that paradigm, because one technically you are because it's innate, and the other one technically you have because it's acquired. But in the way that we function, plus the fact that we're pretty much probably all much more majority,
Yeah,
it
that's the thing.
doesn't matter.
There are more people who are neurodivergent than there are not, but they may not realize it because some people don't understand the paradigm. It's not really taken off yet in mainstream medical, even in the mental health care world. It's just starting to get some recognition. In fact, a friend of mine and I have created a certification for coaches and healthcare providers to learn how to be neuroaffirming in their approach, because there are so many people who are still using harmful language to people who are neurodivergent, like like there's something wrong with you that we need to fix. Let's treat it. Just language that puts people down or makes them feel different or othered. And
Other,
so the
yes.
goal, yeah, right? So the goal of the paradigm or the movement is to normalize or equalize. I shouldn't say normalize, equalize. Everybody's normal is different. So it's to equalize our approach and to affirm people's neurotypes as being just a variation. It's no different than having red hair, right? It's just a different way of being in the world.
Being
But
in the
it's not,
world.
yeah, it's not a disease though. And that's something that which is really rewarding for me when I talk to my clients and I can empower them to think of their neurotype as, because a lot of people have not heard of the paradigm yet. And so when they come in, they're intrigued, but they don't really know what it means. And so when I empower them to own their neurotype and see it as maybe a strength or as at least not a disorder, right? Because there's a lot of like, I've always felt like there was something wrong with me. I hear that a lot from clients. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with you. It's the environment you're in. It's that people don't understand. So if you're in a neurotypical environment all the time, yes, you're going to feel different because neurotypical way of being in the world is different from a neurodivergent point of view. So even like with social things, the social expectations, for example, in neurotypical conversations, often people are speaking pretty quickly and they respond pretty quickly, but neurodivergent people often need a mindful pause. They need time to process what it is, how they're going to react. They're not quite so quick to jump in. And so when they're in a social situation, they feel overwhelmed because people are like, responding really quickly and they're like, I need to take a step back. So one of the things I often recommend is to make sure you have a neurodivergent support group of friends who are also neurodivergent and have the same lived experience. And so in those conversations, you are unlikely to be rushed or, another example is often if you text people, neurotypical people expect you to respond right away or they think there's something wrong. But with a neurodivergent person, they would be like, I'll respond when I feel like it. It may be a week from now. But if you're also neurodivergent, you're like, I don't care. I'll do the same thing the next time. So there's a whole different levels of social, things that are involved. And so it helps to empower people to own their neurotype and understand and appreciate that there's nothing wrong with them. It's just that the environment is not always friendly for neurodivergence.
There's so many, like my brain is going like whoa, 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 like in all directions, because first we actually talked, there was a beautiful example of the bears that you talked about, and it's just like, there's nothing wrong with the polar bear, but like if you put the polar bear who's like meant to be on ice in the North Pole in like the
Yeah.
like in the Black Forest here, well, he's not meant to function here. And there's a lot of shame around like the fact that we're not neurodivergent and we have like certain like different like ways of moving in this world, and we've been forced to come out so much of ourselves to fit, to fix, to like, so it's and it brings even more anxiety and even more like it really like amplifies the issue more than it has to be. right? Like, so that's one thing that I'm getting from you. The other thing is that, there's a difference, and I love, like, and I'm gonna link in the show links that you're gonna give me. I'm gonna link the link to that training that you have for coaches, because it really switches our brain to, like, how do we approach this, because it's not a problem. So how do we empower, like, empowerment? It's like, it's kind of like a word that we are seeing everywhere, but like, it really means something, because then it brings back, like, the inside of the person, that power to, like, make decisions for themselves, instead of always being externally exhaustingly, like, there's nothing to fix. There's nothing to fix. So one, to empower, and two, there was something that you said about the lived experience, which is, we need to be neuroaffirming and embracing that and being aware of. And for those of you that don't know the wording, or just don't know, like, how this works, please be kind to yourself, because it's all new things that are coming up, and that we don't, like, the point is not to, like, change paradigm or whatever. It's just, like, to be aware that this exists, and be aware that this languages exist and in our practices and in our daily life, and to empower the people that are helping people to trust the lived experience of the other people.
Yes. That is a very, very important piece of the neurodiversity affirming paradigm, is that the lived experience of people is way more than somebody's professional experience. And so I will tell my clients that I'm neurodivergent, but I'm not autistic. I'm like, so your 2 days of being autistic is more than my 30 years of being in the autism field, so to speak, because it's not the same thing. And so we really need to give more credibility to the voices of those who have the lived experience. I think that is something that is very, very much missing in the medical and the mental health care field as it stands today, is that the professionals are given more credibility than people who've actually gone through it. So, for example, ABA, that is applied behavioral analysis. There is a kind of a behavioral therapy. And so a lot of adults who are autistic who have gone through ABA are saying that it's very traumatizing. And yet people who have done, who are actual ABA teachers or professors or whatever are saying, no, they're discounting the voices of the adults who have gone through ABA in preference of the research that they have, which, by the way, the research doesn't really hold up either. But that's a huge point of contention in the neurodiversity affirming movement, is that ABA is harmful. Please don't make our children do that. But doctors continue to push it. Psychologists continue to push it as the gold standard therapy for autism. So if you're in the neuroaffirming movement, you're saying, first of all, there's no treatment for autism. You may treat, if they have something around it like anxiety, but autism is not a disease that needs to be treated. And second, ABA is harmful. So please don't force us to do that. So there's a lot of, that's one of the few, not few, sorry. There's one of several points of kind of conflict between the mainstream way of looking at neurodivergence and the movement itself.
This is a recurring theme in my conversation. It's a recurring thing in my conversation, in my lived experience, as a woman in the medical system. And there's so much gaslighting and low level, but still there, violence in the way that we operate in the medical system. And let's bring conversation to this, because I don't think it's deliberate. Like I have to believe that it's not deliberate, but I don't think that it is. But there's, like, it needs to be brought to our awareness. Like, there needs to be awareness around this, because, like, like, I'm speaking for like as a woman, like in the system, and from when I've lived, but also what my mom went through when she went through her cancer, um, where because we have the lab coat or the stethoscope or whatever, like I know better than you and your lived experience. And if you listener are listening to this and feel like you've had this kind of experience, um, please reach out to somebody that will support you in this. I personally like had an experience where I came back from seeing a doctor, and I went straight, like my husband at the time was not my husband, but like I was straight in the shower. Like he didn't even touch me, but the conversation that we had together was so violent. He didn't even lift his eyes from his paper that he was writing on. But the words that were coming out of his mouth, and the um the subtle judgment, or like I was just a number in a case. And I've seen this with my mother, and I've seen this with a lot of women that I've supported, and I can only imagine what it can be as well for a neurodivergent person in the system that is even less equipped to deal with this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I agree with you. I don't think there, for the most part, I don't think there's malice behind this pushback to the movement. I think some people genuinely think that the science is bigger, or the science means more, or whatever. But they forget the human factor. And I think that's failing for a lot of people in the medical world. They're just, people become numbers, like you said, and they fail to see the human behind the number. And so they don't give credibility to the lived experience. They're like, no, no, but this is how I learned it. This is what the science says. This is more important. Um, and so that's, until we have, which we are getting now, a lot of autistic people going into the research and starting to do the scientific studies to validate what everybody's saying. There are measures being created right now to assess for autism that are created by autistic people. And there are, because right now a lot of the assessment tools are not neuroaffirming. And so that's been challenging to find tools that are not. Um, I'll give you another example is like one of the biggest testing companies doesn't even, well, not even one, actually, most of them don't have norms for people who are gender diverse. So by norms, for the listener, what I mean is that when you do a test, they compare your score to other people like you, but they don't have any people in that population that are gender diverse. And so if you're gender diverse, what are they going to compare you to? So that's something that they're actually working on now as well. So there's a lot of movement in, the testing world and whatever, to become more affirming, to be more inclusive. So I think that's a step in the right direction. It's just taking a long time.
Yeah, well, I actually heard like that was something that stunned me like several years ago. It's like, anyways, for anything that like the science is evolving, the way that we conduct science and everything is always evolving. But on top of it, it takes like an average like of 17 or 18 years between when we know, like we acquire some sort of knowledge in the science community until the practice of the doctors. Like 17 years is a whole generation almost.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes a long time. I mean, I'm sure if it would make them money, they would do it faster. But this is not. Yeah, it takes forever. I do understand and appreciate that for testing, they do have to do a lot of research to validate their
Mhm.
test measures and everything. So I understand that, but I do think they could have started about 10 years ago. I think they're starting.
Mhm. They're starting now. So if I'm bringing this back to this wonderful like oneness, because like it's so linked, like what you're doing and your spiritual path, and when you're doing it's like it's always linked, as we said like at the beginning, but like yours is really like you have this level of like knowledge and wisdom and awareness of our oneness, of our wholeness, that we belong together in this beautiful way, and that we're all it's like that crystal that actually diffracts light, you know, and like have all these colors. And then we're just saying like, you know, like your tone of orange is the right one. There's nothing to fix. You're just orange, you know, like you're just a polar bear. You're just, you know, you are artistic. Like it, like, and how to bring that back to like, I think it's just so beautiful.
Thank you. I think one of the things that I've been working on the last couple of years has been trying to merge all of the different parts of me into one big whole. And part of that was bringing my spirituality into my psychological world. And so, how I did that was because I wanted all of me to reflect all of me in all of my areas, like business, personal, professional, whatever. And so, how I did that was I slowly started bringing the spirituality piece into my assessments and my coaching. And so now it's like all kind of one. And I actually tell my clients I'm woo woo up front. I have that on my website. I encourage, and I meditated on it. I was like, I meditated and I told the divine, I was like, I want clients who are going to be open to the woo woo. I want to be able to tell them some of my spiritual stuff and where it's coming from. And I only want to get the right number of clients every month. I don't want a waiting list because I didn't want clients to have to
Yes.
wait.
Yes. That's
That's
something that
horrible.
you mentioned
If
about the
you
waiting list.
if you think you're neurodivergent and you have to wait 6 months to find out, that's torture. And that's
Mhm.
exactly what happened. Now I draw the people into my world who are meant to find me, who are open to my channeling during our sessions. Like I'm doing an assessment, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is what you should be doing professionally." And they're all open to it, and I don't have a wait list. And I get the same right number of people every month that I need.
This is so that actually brings so we're out, we're within like we're it's like the outside the shell and the inside. Right now we're actually, and this is why I think that your conversation and the conversation around this kind of like helped me reach like a wholeness within, because I had like I knew the outside thing, but there were so many, and and it happened like just after we went, my husband and I now live in Europe, and we do like weekend like getaways. And for our anniversary in October, he actually like prepared this whole like surprise. So I didn't know where we were going. He just said like, you'll need like this type of clothes, and like we just hop on the train and we just went, and we stayed in Luxembourg city. And the entire time that I was there, I was thinking about, because you know it's a very, for those of you that don't know, like it's a place in Europe that is very central. It has so much history, like of wars and like of boundaries and like of like walls and stuff. And the entire time that I was there, you know, in my mind, I always tell my clients like, yes, emotions are difficult to deal with, but if you cut yourself off from like the bad, you're cutting yourself off from everything. So we have to learn how to use our boundaries, external boundaries, as like a cell, you know, like a cell, the outer cell basically. So it has to be permeate. It has to let something in, something out. Sometimes your boundaries are a little bit tighter because you're going into hermit mode. Sometimes you actually are open more. Like it has to be like a very dynamic relationship. But within, and I started like I was there and I started to think about the boundaries that I had within myself and the boundaries that we actually construct within ourselves, and how that, you know, hinders the flow of our emotions within, and our like understanding and our self-love and our next step in belonging into this ground thing. Because you know it's this whole like all the other people are better than me, like I'm worthless or whatever. So I love how this whole conversation brings us back to the big love, but starting within.
Yes. And I think that's a big piece of like working with also neurodivergent clients is that they're sometimes feeling broken because of how they've been treated in society and how they've been made to feel. And I love how you put that is bringing them to wholeness within and helping them, empowering them to see that there's nothing broken. It's always been whole and they've just been in unfriendly environments and they just need to remember.
Just to remember. Oh my God. Rabia, I am going to leave all the links to for people if people that are listening to us, they feel, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for. This is the person I've been looking for. I'm gonna put you in contact with that. I again want to say how much I'm blessed, grateful. I feel seen, and I think that a lot of people are going to feel seen and heard as well. And I thank you for bringing your colors to this world in the most incredible way.
Thank you so much. You're such a wonderful, gracious, and lovely host. And it was a lovely conversation. Just, I mean, we can talk anytime you want. It was such an uplifting and ineffable conversation. I just really appreciate your kindness and compassion and for reaching out, because I think this is an important conversation and we can't talk about this enough.
No, I agree. I agree. And it was so much in my heart to reach out to you. I wanted to have a few guests before you came on to the podcast. So thank you so much. So listeners, I see you, I feel you, I hear. Take care.